I'm a native of Arizona, so I think that's important to understand because there's not a lot of us still hanging around. It gets really hot, and so typically what happens is that people just get sick of it, and so then they end up leaving at some point in time. So, but it's nice 8 months out of the year, so I like that. And obviously, being in fitness, it allows you to be outside pretty much all year,
Mhm.
and that's super helpful. So. Anyway, native Arizonan, played sports my whole life. I mean, primarily for me, it was baseball and football. Um, Through high school, I played baseball through my junior year and then just focused on football. And then went to play for a small college in eastern Arizona, football. Hurt my shoulder pretty bad, ended up getting surgery. So that was kind of a life choice moment where you're making decisions on, okay, is it worth me trying to get surgery, get it fixed up, and then go play football more, or get surgery and go work towards like what's next, which
Mhm.
for me was finishing up my degree and then moving on with life, as they say. And so that's kind of what I did. Went to ASU, Arizona State University, graduated with a degree in kinesiology. I think that was used to be called exercise science, and then when I was going through school, they kind of changed it a little bit. And I think it's more common to refer to it as kinesiology, but essentially the study of the
Mhm.
human body and movement and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
So I grew up in a family, fortunately, that was um, like pretty well into fitness, like health and fitness, like my parents were. My brother, he's 7 years older than me, so quite a bit older, but he was too. And so I grew up, obviously playing sport, but then also had, parents and siblings who took care of themselves and made that a priority in their lives, which obviously is a huge influence. And I
Mhm.
certainly have learned a lot from that and have taken that into my own life to make sure that my kids are seeing good habits and what hard work is, right?
Right.
And so, fortunate to kind of grow up in that atmosphere. And as I was going through school and ultimately graduated, trying to figure out exactly the path. I mean, it was, I had some aspirations to maybe be a strength and conditioning coach at the university or college level. And like at that time when I finished my degree, just was like, you know what, like I think I'm ready to like see what career paths there might be without going to more school. And that was kind of like the
Right.
decision point because it's like you can always go back to do more school. If I needed to go get a graduate degree, I mean, I could always go back and do that. Um, but I couldn't necessarily go back in time to go find a career path if I was, down the road and maybe too old to, go down certain paths. So, anyways, I did that. Went out and just tried to figure out what I might like to do, um, and dabbled in a few different things. But what I ended up landing in was, of all places, recruiting. And so, as like if you think about like headhunting, like headhunters.
Mhm.
So basically, companies hiring these companies to go find talent for their organizations, right? So they call them headhunters or executive consultants. So I kind of found my path, and the reason why that happened is had some buddies that kind of went down that same path, but ultimately, like the company I went to go work for, they targeted like new graduates that were athletes that they could bring in, and because they knew like the competitiveness was there, they knew like the
Mhm.
drive was there, they knew like
Mhm.
that these kids were going to be hungry, right, to go learn and like they knew what like the work that needed to get done, and so they could train and mold like these young 20 2-year-olds or whatever we were coming out of school and throw us into the mix and know we weren't going to quit without a good fight. And so like didn't plan on that happening, but ultimately like that was the entry door to what now is, and I'll get to where I am now, but like the career path that I ended up going down. And
Mhm.
all along the way, like fitness has been always first and foremost since I was a kid. I mean, I remember thinking back to like when I was in like seventh or eighth grade, my brother would come pick me up at junior high and at lunchtime, and we go hit this old school gym that was just down the street. So we just pick weights
Nice.
at lunchtime.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and
awesome.
so like it was just like what I did. And like that became like my fitness and like working out and my health like was always the priority. Like everything was
Mm,
kind of secondary to that. And those habits have just obviously helped me get to, I think, where I'm at today, and hopefully will help me continue on that path. But it's just been something that it just wasn't an option, like not to take care of myself, right?
mhm.
And so
Yep.
I've always pursued that, even as I went into corporate America. So I kind of started on the recruiting side, but then worked my way up into management positions and different leadership positions. And so today I'm a vice president of talent management, which essentially means that like my teams are responsible for like all the hiring that we do at the company, all the training and development that we do at the company. And so it's a real estate investment firm, and so I kind of lead the efforts there. Um, and so like there was this article. I don't remember when it was written. It was probably like early 2000s, and I forget who wrote it, but it was this whole story around like this being a corporate athlete. I think that was the name of the article. It's a Wall Street Journal, I think, or maybe it was a Harvard Business Review article.
Mm,
And it was being a corporate athlete. And the whole story and like the research that they did was around this whole notion of like if you can't take care of yourself and you can't like and you're not exercising and you're not doing the things that you should do, like how do you expect to show up in the corporate environment and perform at the highest level?
right.
Like
Exactly.
there's this thing, it's like think about like high level athlete, I mean professional athletes. I mean you guys are in hockey and you guys know the grind. But like professional athletes, right? Like they train like hard just for short moments of time, right? Like they are training super intense, and most of the time their seasons are pretty short, right? And so, but then you go on the corporate side, and it's like 340 days out of the year, like you're grinding, right? And so,
Mhm,
like you're working 14, maybe 12, whatever your schedule is, but you're working a lot of hours per day. As to where an athlete's training a lot, but then only performing for maybe an hour or two, right? And
mhm,
so, like, when you think about like the inverse of that and like the corporate world, it's like if you're not training yourself, like physically, emotionally, spiritually, and physically like you're just not going to be able to show up consistently for a long period of time and perform at a high level, right? And
yep.
so that's why it's always been like become really important to me, um, to just be a really good example, and try to help as many people as I can through that, because most people aren't making a living in fitness. They're making a living in something else, and then
Mhm,
it happens to be maybe something that they just enjoy and maybe they're doing as a supplement. Doesn't mean you
yep.
can't do that because there's a lot of successful people certainly that are in the fitness space, but the
Mhm,
majority I would say have careers in something else, right?
right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's been kind of like my path. And so like earlier this year, I mean obviously I've always been into fitness, so like I used to do CrossFit. I mean, one of the old school CrossFit guys. I mean, I started CrossFit like in 2007, 8.
Oh
So
wow,
like,
that's really one of the
yeah,
OGs.
I was actually like looking at some videos from like one of the CrossFit um, like competitions and gyms I used to be at, and because I used to be pretty good, like, I used to be really strong and like just really fit, and like I competed at a decently high level. I mean, I went to regionals and like did all that stuff back in the
Mhm,
day. Um, but there's just a point where you've got to you can't train enough to like continue to compete at that level, and it was just
mhm,
really hard on the body. I mean, I think we all realize that like you can take it to an extreme, and then it's just like it's almost like diminishing returns after a while, right? And
mhm,
so I think we've all kind of been there, done that. So did CrossFit for a long time, and then kind of just started to take like blends of that. I did bodybuilding when I was like still in college. So I competed in some like natural bodybuilding competitions when I was going through college. So, like I've done a lot of different things around just because like I think variety is good. It's healthy.
Yep.
Keeps your body. I think having to adapt and instead of becoming complacent. And so went through a lot of those different things. Did an Ironman in 2018. Like I'm just like somebody that's got to set
Awesome.
goals, right? So it's like whether it was
Right.
CrossFit, because like once you're done with sport, then you're kind of like, all right, now like I got to have something that's like competitive. So
Hmm.
the one good thing about like the career I fell into, which was on the recruiting initially, is like it was super competitive. I mean, just you had to show up and perform and compete because there was so much competition. And so that
Hmm.
kind of fed that, but it wasn't feeding the athletic component that I still obviously had a strong desire for. And so that's kind of where CrossFit certainly supplemented, right? Kind of was a lot of,
Yep.
got into some competitions, did that stuff. That was fun. And then, some other things along the way. And then I did the Ironman in 2018. And it was just like, I always like thought about it and I was like, man, that's a lot of work. And then, there's one day I was just like, I'm just going to do it and start training for it. So I hired a coach. And because I knew like, I know how to like train myself, but I don't know how to train for a triathlon. That
Right.
Mhm.
because there's just a specialization to it, and I didn't know that.
It's a
And
different beast.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so I always encourage people. I'm like, listen, if you have a goal to do something that you don't necessarily know, like how to go about attacking it, it's okay to hire a coach. Like hire a coach,
Hmm.
invest in yourself, learn, take notes, and then you have the blueprint for if you want to do it again. You don't have to
Hmm.
keep them as a coach, right? You're getting the information. I mean, that's the whole point. So that's what I did. I hired a coach, really set me up for success so that the Ironman wasn't a disaster. It was actually like, it was hard, but it wasn't like torturous the whole time, right? So that was fun. And then, like I've done some other things. I don't know if you know David Goggins. So he's got this
Oh yeah.
4x4x48 thing that he does. So I did that like a few years ago, just as another challenge to like say, hey, I wonder if I can run 4 miles, every 4 hours for 48
Right.
straight hours. And so that was interesting because you're on the streets. It's pitch black. Nobody's out there at, midnight, 1 a.m. running four
Yep.
miles. So that was fun. And then more recently, obviously, you guys found me through my page, which is AZ Belt Fitness on Instagram. And so, really, it's just like a passion project for me. Like, wanted to start a page. Obviously, I've trained people for a long, long time, all along the way, both family, friends, as well as select clients here and there, just because I have a career and I don't have a ton of time to
Mhm.
invest in just training people. And so, really, just more of an opportunity to reach and extend just what I know and what's worked really well for me from a training perspective, and just share that with other people. I mean, that's really like the main objective of AZ Built Fitness is to just share that. And so, started it in February, my page, and it's for some reason people like it a lot, and it's grown quite a bit in a
Wow.
very short
That's a lot of growth in a short time.
That's awesome.
yeah, it's definitely wasn't like what I was planning on. It was just more like a blog, right? To like just showcase like because it's just me working out. Like it's what I do. I'm just like, showing people, hey, here's kind of the workouts that I do, here's kind of the philosophy that I go by. I'm a working professional. I've got a family, 3 kids, they're all in sports. We're running around me and my wife like crazy and just trying to fit it in, right? Fit in and make sure that like I talked about in the very beginning of this, my health has always been a priority, and it's never going to not be. I don't care how busy I get, and that's what I try to
Mhm.
help people understand by showing them the workouts that I do. That I've just incorporated a
Mhm.
lot of different methodologies over the course of many, many years, and just kind of bundled it together into short, varying intensities and different modality type of workouts that if you do that consistently well over a long period of time, you will see results, right? Like a
Yeah.
15-minute workout on the surface, people are just like, there's no way. Well, okay, yeah, but when you've been doing it for 20 years, 25 years, right? Like those little 15, 10-minute workouts stacked over time make a huge difference. It's just like me putting
Yeah.
$5 in the bank every day, and in 20 years, now I've got a $500,000, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
same type of thing. My body's adjusting just like compound interest does, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so that's, that's kind of like the what's become of today is,
Hmm.
obviously I've got my career still, leading people and organizations, and I that's going to be my career. I mean, that's what I love, and I'm passionate about really developing others, and helping organizations succeed. So I'll still continue to do that, while also, using Easy Built Fitness as a platform to really help educate and just, hopefully encourage people, to understand that, you don't have to spend hours at a gym. You literally could buy a handful of pieces of equipment and have them in your backyard. And if you really wanted to get in shape, you could do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly,
Absolutely.
you could have nothing and you could use your body. You could use your body
Hmm.
weight and gravity, and you could
Right.
get in pretty good shape if you were disciplined enough. And that's the
Yeah.
difference, right? Most people aren't disciplined enough. They talk about it like, yes, I want to get to be like that, or man, I want to look like that. But but do you really want to like go through the hard work that it takes consistently over time to get there? And
Yeah.
that's the hard part, right? That's where most people either go right or they go left. And
Hmm.
that's the reality. And that's, I just want to try to help people understand that it doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to take a lot of time out of your personal or professional life. It can be just a little bit, but when you're consistent with it, and it's a non-negotiable that you show up every day and you put that deposit in, that's when you start to see success over time. When you look back and you're like, man, never thought I'd get here, but just stacking those wins every day, look where I'm at
Oh
now.
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think on the fitness side, we've talked to so many people that have a common theme that actually understand the power of fitness and health, like being in good shape and treating your body right. I think, Dylan and I talk about this too on the business side of things, is that if you're in shape and you're going to a business meeting or whatever it might be, you instantly have a sort of respect from the people that you're meeting with and for yourself too, right? There's a confidence piece that comes into that. And I certainly notice it. I think it's a key factor that a lot of people underestimate. And the people that haven't really been in shape and don't treat their bodies properly, they've never gotten to experience that, so they don't know. But on your point too, like so many people, they're whether they make the excuse of they're busy, they gotta, they take their kids to the sports game or whatever it is. Like you said it yourself, like body weight stuff. You could do burpees for 10 minutes, and that's a solid ass
Yeah.
workout. Like you get anybody to do burpees for 10 minutes, and they're gonna be hurting by the end of it. It's gonna be a pretty good workout. So
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I like the point about like, listen, it has me being in really good physical condition and, um, like working at that, has that helped me in my professional career? 110%. No doubt about it. Not just in my own confidence, but in the presence, right? When you're working your way through corporate America, right, and you have a physical presence and confidence about you because man, that guy, he takes care of himself. Like he must be strong and must be a hard worker. Like obviously you got to perform, but I'm telling you right now, from personal experience, it does matter and it does help. But to your point, a lot of people just don't understand that, right? Because they've never kind of gone down that path. And I always tell
right.
people, like to your other point, is like if you can't fit in stuff or you're busy with life, I'm like if you're taking your kids to a park to go practice flag football for 2 hours and you're sitting in your car on the side of the street waiting for them to get done, like you could have walked around the park at the very least for an hour, hour and a half. Or you could have thrown some dumbbells in the back of your car and went and did a
Hmm.
15, 20-minute dumbbell workout, right, in the park. So, you know, it's just like helping people understand like the reality of decision making or lack thereof. Like, do you really want to do these things, or is it just a verbal exercise?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to, like, do you really want it? And it becomes down to making a priority. No one's too busy. It's you didn't make it a priority. You can always make time, find time. You know, you even see the memes on Instagram where, you know, it's the guy's making fun of, you know, his buddy or whatever who says he doesn't have time to go to the gym, and then, you know, the little thought bubble was like me who gets up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. Like, there is always a way to make it happen. You just have to make it a priority. And you know, we've had tons of people on the podcast too who have that common theme or common emphasis on making it a priority, not just, you know, for the sake of getting in shape, but your overall health. Like, your health is your wealth, and it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank, you know, whatever other definitions of wealth there are. Like, if you aren't healthy, you aren't wealthy. Like, you don't have anything, you know, to back you. And exercise is one of those key pillars that makes it up. And, you know, people that are able to share their story or share that emphasis and passion for fitness, like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, we all want to be here for us. We all know it's going to end at some point, right? And no, nothing's guaranteed. We all know that, and we all have our own kind of spiritual outlets and all that stuff. But like at the end of the day, like, why not like put your best hand in? And like, you know, yeah, you could be somebody that runs a 5.5 minute mile and you could bench 300 pounds and squat 450, and your day might end tomorrow. Like you might be in the best. I mean, that's like the reality, right? But like, but why take even more of a chance by not taking care of yourself with the things that are in your control? Because there's certainly all those
Hmm.
factors that are outside of our control as individuals. But
Yeah.
why not invest in that, right? And so, you know, that's the hard part for folks is just to really wrap their minds around the commitment that's needed, and the level of consistency that's needed. But it's also too like just I think helping people understand like when you think about work, they think about working out, and maybe they have one like vision of what working out looks like. And it might be some person in the gym like for an hour and a half pushing weights all around, right? Or it could be somebody at the track, you know, spending 2 hours running around a track. Like that's what they envision when they say like, oh, I can't work out. Well, that's a that's a one type of working out, but that's a specialized workout, right? So you could literally go walk around your block and hold 10-pound dumbbells, or you could throw a backpack on and throw, you know, a gallon of water in your backpack, and now you got a ruck and you can go walk around your block, or you could drop to the ground and do
Mhm.
push-ups every 30 seconds or every minute that you're walking around the block. Like there's just so much variety. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, so it's just trying to educate because it is confusing when you think about social media and you just think about all the different types of programs and
Hmm.
workouts and like influencers, you know, saying do this or do that or this is the best way or that's the best way or there's lots of good ways. There's no
Hmm.
singular best way to get in shape and to be fit, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
it's more about movement. Like you got to find a way to move and you got to find something that you know you can commit to and then you can build on that, right? You can't start at, you know, level 10 when you've been at level 0 and think you're going to continue with that. Like if you're at level
Mhm.
0, you got to start at level 1 and 2 and then get yourself some good habits, right, that you can do consistently. And then now you can build yourself to 3 and 4 type workouts. And
Hmm.
then, okay, now I've built some more momentum. And now maybe I can go to like 6, 7 level workouts, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a compound thing. It really is. But I do want to dive into a couple of things. So obviously you're pretty well versed in a few different areas. Like you've done the Ironman, you did the 4x4x48. You're in CrossFit for a while. So I do want to talk about the mental side
Mhm.
of those sorts of things because I've run in a couple ultra marathons, and I actually did the 4x4x48 in preparation for one of the ultras because I was just like that. I read Goggins' books, read both of them, and
Yep.
I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go after it and do it, and then we'll see how it goes. And obviously, there's some mental battles that come along with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm curious to hear what your experience was like on the 4x4x48 specifically, because you're right, like you're running out there, 12 a.m. You're waking up in the middle of your sleep, and it's like, damn, there's nobody out here. Like literally, it's ghost town, and you're out there running 4 miles.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. That's cool that you did that. That's awesome. Which is funny, kind of a funny experience is like when I was doing mine in my neighborhood, there was one other guy like in my like the 4 mile like kind of like radius that I would
Hmm.
run. That was like at midnight and he was running too and like he was doing the same thing. It was like so ironic. Yeah.
No kidding.
But it was, yeah, so like I did have like I saw him like once or twice on a couple of the runs and we would just do like, yo, what's up, man? But like for me, I don't have the quit. I
Hmm.
just don't quit, right? And I know like easier said than done, but like it's not about how fast or like, like I wasn't in a different place in my life where time didn't really matter. I tried to like jog like every 4 miles. I tried to just jog the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, but like it was more about like just finishing, right? And like
Mm,
so I think you have to be like honest with like what are you getting? What are you trying to like gain or like what's your goal from that event? Like for when I did the Ironman, it's like I knew I put in like 6 months of training and I knew like generally what paces I could handle, but I never did a full Ironman until I did the actual race. And so,
Hmm.
but my goal was like just one foot in front of the other. Like just keep moving.
mm,
Just don't stop for any long period of time, right?
Hmm.
And before you know it, like you're far along. And then it's like, okay, I'm halfway done and now it's like, okay, now you're building momentum. Now you got adrenaline, and so now you can just go. Same thing with like the 4x4x48 because you're coming in, you're like trying to get some sleep on the couch or like a couple hours, and then your alarm goes off, and you're like, I got to wake up again and like try to get warmed up to go run. Um, but it's just like for me, like mentally, if I commit to something, unless I'm like physically injured or unable to like continue, then you keep moving. And
Hmm.
even if you just were walking, right? Maybe you had a blister or nasty blister on your foot and like every time you ran for whatever reason like it was just excruciating pain, but okay, I can walk then, right? I'll just walk and I'll just kind of like keep it from rubbing and creating more friction. It's not about like, oh, the blister, I can't run so I got to stop. Well, hands up, I got to quit. Like
Yeah.
that's too easy, and like quitting such an easy habit to create. And I think that's the difference, right? Once you quit once or twice, when things get hard, what do you think
Yeah.
you're going to do the third and fourth time?
Right.
mm,
You're going to throw your
Yeah.
hands up and quit again. So, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
the
yep.
if you don't address that, right, and you don't go into some sort of activity with the right mental preparation, and you've quit in the past when things got hard, you probably need to work on some smaller things and retrain the habit of not quitting when things start to get hard.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And I think there's a piece of it too where people can't see past the pain. In the ultras that I ran, I found that the most difficult part was if I was stopping to get food or a drink or whatever, and your adrenaline kind of slows down, and then you're like, you got to get going again, right? Like you're gonna get back to the running, and it's like the first few steps, maybe the first like 20 yards, you're like in excruciating pain, but once you get past that, and your endorphins start coming in again, then you're on cruise control again. But it's just getting past that first part, and I think people can't see past that. And it's more than just a race or an ultra or Ironman, whatever it is, but in life in general, right? Like they hit a rough patch, they're facing obstacles, they can't see past it. Like it almost like just smothers them in daily life, and they can't really see past that to ultimately get to the greener grass.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I remember, I mean, I've read plenty of like Navy SEAL books and just others who've gone through obviously that type of training, but it's similar to kind of what you're explaining. I think David Goggins even talked about it in one of his books, was just like this, 5 second rule, right? Because to your point, like there's that 5 seconds. Like, are you gonna make a life decision in those 5 seconds when it sucks and you hurt and like throw away all that time you've been like as an example in SEALs when they're trying to, in SEALs
Mhm.
training, like is that 5 seconds of being cold in the water and like you're just hating life? Are you going to let that 5 seconds determine like the rest of your life? In that
Mhm.
case, becoming a Navy SEAL, right? But
Mhm.
in this case of an ultra marathon, or whatever it was, like, are you going to allow that 5, 10 seconds of doubt, determine whether you finish that race, or not? And so it's just like working through those 5 to 10 seconds, recognizing that they're going to come, and
Yeah.
having some sort of mechanism to work through those 5 and 10 second increments and then just keep stacking those one after another, right? And so that's kind of that. But you have to like you've you've got to be aware of it and actually train that before you go show up and you're in that moment, because it's not going to just be something where you can just flip a switch and be like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah. 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 I think the mental aspect is the more difficult aspect of the training piece, right?
Mhm.
When you're getting into it's getting heavy, it's getting difficult to push through. Like you can resort back, well, on the Goggins topic, like he talks about the cookie jar,
Yeah.
right? Like reaching back in the cookie jar of, experiences that you've had in the past that you can kind of turn back to, like, oh, like I've done that before, I've done this before. And it's like, that's the compounding that can really push you forward. So I think the only way that you get there is by doing. Like I think there's been plenty of times. I remember the first ultra marathon that I went for was a 100-mile race in Oklahoma. Went out there by myself without a crew or anything like that,
Yeah.
and I made it 64 miles, and like both my feet were like balloons, and I couldn't do anything. I was just like, I learned from it, right? So the next time I came more prepared. I knew what to experience at the 25-mile mark, the 50-mile mark, and it was just kind of you learn as you go, and you build up this kind of mental callus, that can ultimately get you to the point where you want to be at some point.
Yeah, not 100%. I mean, it's always been, always is, and always will be mental. I mean, we all know that, right? Like, I mean, your
Mhm.
people are going to quit a heck of a lot sooner than their physical bodies are, needing to stop. And so, the training piece is important, right? I mean, you got to take yourself to some uncomfortable places, and that even if you're not going to do some serious competition, because it's just training you for when you get smacked in the face in life or in your
Mhm.
job, right? Like, I don't care what you're doing. Like, we're all going to have our moments, right? Where it's like tough stuff. And think how much better you're going to be prepared if you've been putting yourself through some of those exercises where you've become a little bit uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Not
Exactly.
pushing yourself. Like, there's this phrase like, growth happens at the edge of your comfort zone. It's not the end, or like you're falling off the cliff, because that's not going to help. So you got to kind of
Mhm.
tease yourself towards the end of your comfort zone and then get comfortable with that, right? Versus taking yourself off the deep end, like pushing so hard that now you're hurting yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so some of like my training, even today, that's why I try to just have variety and really like do workouts occasionally that are just, I don't know, like there's no necessary like reason or purpose for it other than like it's hard on the surface. It's a hard workout and it's gonna suck and it's gonna be an hour and a half long, and but I'm gonna do it. And I'm just training
Mhm.
myself, right, to just take it to a little bit further level and just get my body to understand that it can take that, and my
Mhm.
mind that, listen, you can continue to push through that, right? And I'm not training for anything other than just training for life, and that's mostly what I do day in and day out.
Mhm. Yep.
Exactly. And I think, that stems from having an athletic background. And I think that's why athletes are so valued and pursued and sought after in the workplace now because like to your point earlier, employers know that. They know they have that competitive edge. They know they have that discipline. And that's something that doesn't just peter out in life. It's something that's, kind of ingrained through sport. And I think that's why sports and athletics as a whole and fitness are so valuable, not just for your sport, but for the rest of your life in the workforce. It makes you such a more valuable asset.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, sport is, most of the time like it's team at some level. I mean, there's a lot of individual sports, but you learn how to work with others. You learn how
Hmm.
to work through difficult situations together. You learn how to be coachable because whether you're on a team and you're getting coached by an actual coach in a sport, or like I'm coaching people every single day more than I ever did in sport, right? Like I'm coaching them to build them up and to help them work through challenging situations and to figure out, right, how to navigate through, the day to day. And so like being trained like through sport and being exposed to a lot of those different elements and what I would call virtues of like
Hmm.
being an athlete is incredible and kind
Hmm.
of similar to like military, right? Like if there's a lot of desire of employers to pursue veterans for a lot of good reasons, and some of those are just the straight up discipline and the time management that they're just because they're trained in a lot of those things, and so when they show up to the workplace you can start, down the ways a little bit in terms of like, where are we going to develop this person next? Because they've already got this other stuff covered in
Yeah,
spades, right? So it's
100%.
kind of similar with
Yeah.
sport as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I guess so. The other thing I wanted to ask you about too. So for the Ironman,
Yeah.
because obviously that wasn't something that like you were, you did a bunch of times or
Mhm.
you were familiar with. You kind of just did it that one time, as far as I know. But obviously with the swim, bike, run, out of those three, what was the most difficult for you? I guess in training, and what were you like the least proficient at before the race day?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I actually did like 2018. So I decided to do the Ironman in May of 2018. So I
Hmm.
was like on vacation. I'd been thinking about it, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna train for it. That's when I hired that coach, and like we did like from May to November, like that was the training. But part of that the program was that I was gonna do an Olympic distance. So I did an Olympic distance triathlon in September, and then I did um, uh, the 70.3, which is the half Ironman in October. Then I did the 120.6 full Ironman in November. So like it was like those 3 months, like I just knocked it out. So I did get a little bit of flavor like with the Olympic to like say, okay, at least I know how to do transitions and I know how to do that kind of stuff and like the food stations and all that. And then the half, you get a little bit more experience. So by the time I got, I at least knew how to do that part. In terms
Hmm.
of like training and like what was the most difficult, I mean, I've had pools all my life and swam and all that stuff, but like the straight up swimming, when you haven't done swimming like over like that distance, like consistently, it's just a different level of endurance. And so
Hmm.
when I was training, because like, doing CrossFit and stuff, you run and like, so like running was okay, because you can run and walk and all that stuff. The bike, that's not overly complicated. It's super, low intense for the most part, and you can just spin your way through that. But like
Hmm.
swimming, I remember swimming and training and like being like 3 months into training and being like, why is like the swim not feel like the other like biking and running? Like, how come I don't feel like my body's adjusting and I'm getting better? Like, I don't feel like I'm getting better. And I'm just, because I went to this swim club to be around others and kind of just train and like be pushed in that way. Because if I was by myself, you just stop a lot more, right?
Hmm.
So that helped, but it was like the swim was like, man, and then like it was weird, like, like 3.5, 4 months in, and then all of a sudden, right, like that endurance muscle in the pool started to just come out. And then I could just go continuously and, like your breathing's good, you know how to do your breath and, you're doing the right pace. And then it just felt like you could just keep swimming. It wasn't like about like
Mhm.
how far. It was just like I can just keep going because I'm not really that tired. I'm kind of like baseline, you know?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So like when the race came, I feel like the swim was probably like the best part, like the beginning
Really?
swim.
Oh.
Wow.
Um, just because like I think I did, I mean, I was consistent with the training even when it wasn't going good. Like I was getting pretty nervous that I wasn't making those adjustments and not feeling good about it. But, by the time we got to the full Ironman, the swim was not hard. Um, it was
Mm.
cold. It was about 60 degrees in the lake. So that was probably the hardest part was like trying to not shake like the whole
Yeah.
time. I had a wetsuit on, but my arms were exposed and it was just cold. And so it
Mm.
was more about like the shivering part and like using too much energy because I'm trying to like keep warm than it was
Right.
like the fatigue from just the strokes themselves.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. So was it like much of a form change for you when you first started training for the swimming portion of it? Because I know a lot of it comes down to the mechanics, as does anything, for efficiency's sake, anyways.
Yeah, I think it was more about like yeah, I mean, I mean, I'd like to think like I was athletic and coordinated enough. And like I said, I grew up with pools that I had a
Hmm.
decent enough like freestyle. Um, but yeah, mechanically there was definitely some things, and it was a lot about the breathing, right? Like how
Hmm.
to do the breathing because you just think you like, oh, you turn your head and you take breaths and then like you hold your breath. No, like you want to exhale all your breath, right? Like when you're underwater, so that when you come back, when you're exhaling all that water and then you're turning your head to take in water, all that air is already out. So you don't want to like turn your head and take in like a small portion of
Hmm.
air. You want to like when your head's underwater, blow all those bubbles and like exhale all of it. So when you turn your head up, you're ready for a nice full breath of
Interesting.
oxygen. So there's just like some things like that, and then obviously just mechanics with like the leg kicking and how to do that efficiently. So like we used to work a lot with the boards, the paddle boards, and just do what they just do the kicks where you hold onto the board and you're just using
Hmm.
your legs and just really building up that capacity because you can get a lot of push through your kick if you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you plan on doing any more like challenging events like an Ironman or something along
Yeah,
those
man. I mean,
lines?
I've always thought about doing 100 mile like ultra.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pretty big guy. It's no excuse, but I mean, I'm usually like 210, 215, something like that.
Mhm.
So, no, it's definitely doable. Like running it beats you up. I'm
Mhm.
not a young pup anymore. You guys are a lot younger than I am. And so, I try to be very, very like mindful of
Mhm.
like how I take care of my body and what beats it up and what I can recover from effectively.
Mhm.
And it's not about the race itself, it's about the preparation to get to the race and be able to complete it. Because if I'm going to do something like that, like I need to know I can put in the time, as you know, to
Mhm.
prepare in order to show up on race day and know pretty confidently that no
Yeah.
matter what
Mhm.
goes on, I'm going to get the 100 miles in.
Right. Yeah. Any of those endurance races, like you gotta have a substantial amount of time for the training aspect because it's a lot. I mean, towards the end of when you're training for like an ultra for like a 100-mile race or even a 50 miler, right? Like you're putting in 15, 20, 25 mile runs, and that's a good chunk of time that's taken out of your day.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, right? I've got three kids. They're 12, 14, and 16. And they're, like I said, they're all in sports, some two sports. And so, I've got a wife and, I've got a career. And so it's one of those things where you guys got to try to figure out, like, could I fit in what I needed to from a training perspective
Hmm.
to get out there and do that. So, there'll definitely be something and stuff because I always
Hmm.
have to get myself involved with. And, I'm not sure exactly what that next thing will be, but right now I use workouts. Um, just, what's gonna suck and throw a few things together and make it suck and then go do it. Um,
Mhm.
and so, kind of still training that muscle, but also like being mindful that I'm not in my 20s, not even in my 30s anymore. I'm in my 40s, and so I've got to make sure that I can show up the next day and still work out and
Hmm.
still feel good and still operate. Um, and so just being smart that way is what I'm trying to focus
Mhm.
on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with that being said too, so you're in the now you're kind of in this influencer role position in a way. Obviously, well, you weren't intended to be in that
Yeah.
position, but there is an educational piece to it that you intended for it initially when you first started it. So I guess in this next 3 to 5 year window, obviously you're in the corporate world, and your job is obviously coming first and foremost. Do you see yourself kind of potentially growing this into an opportunity where it might be some sort of a coaching business, or what are your goals kind of in that next 3 to 5 year window?
Yeah. Yeah. And I still, like I said, at some point, I was still active and, still coach people here and there.
Mhm.
I just don't take on a lot because it's just, I don't have the time for it. And I want to make sure I commit to whatever people I have involved in the program. Um, yeah, I mean, I started it, yes, to blog and to really kind of, extend my hand and just kind of show others maybe in similar situations with a busy life, family, career, other
Mhm.
priorities that, listen, it's not going to happen overnight, but I can tell you right now, like you can put in small little deposits every single day. And, over the course of years, you'll start to see a lot of good results. And so hopefully people can see some of that through what I'm doing.
Mhm.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started it for that purpose, but there's obviously, I'm not going to work in the corporate world forever. And, certainly want to continue in the fitness space and really help others. And whether that's through coaching or, consulting in different capacities, or whatever it is. It's a passion of mine. I want to help as many people as I can, and certainly continue to influence my own family and kids through them seeing me, not telling them. And I always say that, like I don't tell my kids, never have, like you should do this. Yeah, we have to do that sometimes, but
Mhm.
it's always been about demonstration. They've seen me go in the garage day in and day out for their whole lives, and
Mhm.
what I eat day in and day out. Like this is not like we're not just like doing this, occasionally, right? This is
Right.
something you got
Mhm.
to do day in and day out. So, I want to continue to help people in that capacity, and I can see, AZ Built Fitness or a version of that continuing to expand and seeing how I can help others in different
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Awesome.
I mean, obviously it takes a lot of work. I mean, hats off to you too. You got a family and everything, and you're still staying in shape. I think that's where the excuses can start to come in, is when people start having families and stuff. And it's like all of a sudden they put on 20, 30 pounds. You're like, what the hell happened kind of thing. But,
Yeah.
that's good stuff. But anyway, so we always like to end our episodes with one or a couple pieces of advice that you would give your younger self, right? When maybe when you're in college, you're playing football still. What's one piece of advice that you would give to that younger self?
Yeah, I think it's like some of the things that we've talked about. I mean, I think one is like don't ever quit, right? Like if don't, and it's kind of related to what we talked about with the whole Goggins thing and like that 5 second
Mhm.
rule. Like don't let one small little bad like inflection point or experience impact literally the trajectory of your life. Like if you had a
Mhm.
bad experience with a coach that was like a 5 second interaction and you're like, I want to quit. I don't even want to play with this sport anymore because that was
Mhm.
like this dude's he's a jerk, right? Like don't make life decisions based on a 5 second experience, right? Like
Mhm.
because you're gonna regret it. Typically, you're gonna regret that, right? Because you're gonna look back in 5, 10 years and be like, man, I wish I would have just stayed playing and just toughed it out and moved in, moved on with it, and I'm sure things would be much different. So
Mhm.
I would just, like for me, it's like don't get in the habit of quitting. And that's not just through sport. Like that's through life in school. Like if something's hard, if you're in math and you just don't do math good and it sucks and you're struggling, don't just throw your hands up and quit. Like go find out like get through it. It's not going to be easy. Um, but there is no easy buttons in life, right? And so
Mhm.
like I'm just always about don't quit. Like just
Mhm.
keep moving, right? Because you're gonna regret those decisions that you make when you end up quitting. And so I mean that I always tell my kids that like just nothing's really worth ever quitting over. It's just it's gonna suck and it's gonna be hard and it's gonna be ugly at times. but don't ever quit. Because, like we said earlier, you get into that habit, and your life's going to be much more challenging as you get older if you've created a quitting habit. I can guarantee you
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the longer
Absolutely.
you delay it, the less you get yourself in that situation of wanting to quit. Like that end goal is going to be that much sweeter once you get there because you know what you've been through. You know how much struggle and hardship that came about, throughout your journey.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, anyways, Trevor, thank you for coming on. Obviously, we loved hearing your story and all the insights that you have. We'll have to have you on when you have like 100,000
I
followers.
know.
You know, when you're growing that fitness page, right?